Alright everybody, this is Eternal Blade here and welcome to a new tutorial. Today we are not going to be covering a modeling technique, but instead we're going to be going over V-Ray lights, particularly the standard V-Ray plane light. So before we begin, you want to do a simple scene setup. Make sure you have V-Ray set as your production renderer here. Just select V-Ray and hit OK. Make sure you're using the V-Ray frame buffer. Enable the built-in frame buffer. Indirect illumination does not need to be on. I have my render region division set at 32, so I get smaller boxes. And my dynamic memory is set at 1 GB below my maximum amount of memory I have in my system. The next thing I have here is I have a V-Ray physical cam set up. I've changed the white balance to neutral. And I am going to change the shutter speed to 30 here. Okay. I also have a simple plane and a box set up so we can illustrate the different settings of the light. So to first start off, create your V-Ray plane light here in the lights in the V-Ray section, and just a V-Ray light. Click and drag to create a light. Okay. So let's just give it a quick render here. So as you see, here we go. We have a V-Ray light, and it lights up the scene. And we can turn it on or off. If we turn it off and re-render the scene, it's going to be black. We have no lights. Very simple. The type of light just simply changes the shape of the emitter. You can use a custom mesh if you want. But for now, we're just going to use the plain light because all the settings are generally the same. Okay, so let's turn the light back on. Now the first thing here is the exclude button. What this does is it allows us to take any object in our scene and exclude it from the light. So let's just drag this box over here and hit OK. And when we re-render, you're going to see the box is no longer illuminated. It's going to be perfectly black. And that's because when a V-Ray does the calculation, that's no longer factored in. It just completely is excluded from the scene. Okay? So we're going to re-include that. It can be a handy feature if you want to not illuminate something specifically, make it feel darker, or anything like that. Now your next option is enable viewport shading. Now, let me see if I can get in here. There we go. So if you enable viewport shading, you're going to see we have the kind of shaded view. And then when we don't enable it, we come back, it'll just be flat. That allows you to just visualize your scene just a little bit better. You can leave it on. It'll take up a few more resources. That's interesting. It'll take up a few more resources, but overall it'll give you a more visual representation. Now you can also have this targeted button here. Now what this does is creates a target for your light. Now you can move it around, you can attach this to something, say you have headlights following something, you can swoop it over. You can animate this target point, and it just allows you for a little bit easier positioning of your light if you don't want to have to always rotate your light, get out the move tools. You can just simply do it with this target. So we're going to turn that off again. Now the next part here is the intensity. So we have a few different units here. We can base it off of an image, luminous power, lumens, luminous, which is, I have no idea what that is, something weird, lumens per minute. We also have radiant power, which is watts, and then radiance, which is watts per minute or per second. Oh, that's what it is, lumens per minute or per second, I believe. So these all do the same thing, so you can pretty much increase your multiplier here. So if you want a bright light, increase it to 60, and when you render your image again, you're going to see that everything is a lot brighter. All these properties are animatable too, so you can increase or decrease them based on keyframes. And then if you bring it way down, you'll see that you get kind of a very dull image. So we're going to bring that multiplier back up to 30. 30. Okay, and the same can be said for other things. For example, radiance power, if we want watts, and you re-render, you're going to see that it changes because the units have changed. And you can change any of those. You can use any units you want if you're basing it off a real life setup. Say you have a 60 watt bulb, well you can set it at 60 watts, and as long as your scene is set to scale, you'll easily be able to achieve a desired look. Now the next mode we have here is color. Now currently we have a white color, but you can change this to anything you want. Let's say we want a dark blue green kind of light, and you render out again. You'll see that the light is now emitting a dark blue green color. And you can change it to whatever color suits your need, you know, something, you know, maybe a little paler, you know, kind of an offbeat yellow, something that like a warm light would produce from a fire or from a light bulb or whatnot. And you can also do it based on temperature. So as you increase the temperature, you see you get these light blues, and then as you decrease the temperature, you get these hotter colors, you know, think kind of sun and fire. And when you render these out, it gives you a same thing. So you can either manually adjust the color, or you can have it set at a temperature. I'm not sure, but I believe this is Kelvin. So you can play around with that, and then as high as you can go, eventually you'll just max it out at dark blue, or at the bottom you'll get black. Well, it's not really black exactly. Well, I guess it is black. It displays itself as orange, but that's pretty much, you don't ever want to do that because you're going to break it. It likes to be way up here where we actually have some color. Alright, next, this is pretty simple. We have the size, so your half length and half width. So you can see you adjust that, you're getting longer, and then when you adjust the width, you get a little bit fatter. And what it means by half size and half width is just you're actually adjusting half the length. So when you do it, you're really only adjusting, this is kind of half the actual distance. And W size, I believe, is for a different, when you enable one of these other options here, you see how when you enable them, some of them go away and some of them come back. Okay? So next, let's carry on here. Let's actually adjust our light just to be to the side here. Okay? We'll bring that color up to something white again. There we go. So now our first option is cast shadows. So you see here that our light, we have shadows right around the edges. But if you want a light that doesn't have any shadows, you simply uncheck that and bam, all the shadows are gone. Pretty self-explanatory. This is used a lot for when you're doing, say, you want reflections on some glass, but you don't want the glass to have 9 different shadows because you have 9 different lights. This is an easy way to simply get rid of that and make your scene look more complex without adding extra detail that'll detract from it. Now, for this next one, we're going to have to go up here. So, currently we have our light, and when we render it, it's going to be a big white box. The problem is, and let me show this real quick by modeling another box. So if we press E and rotate this, press W, just drag it down, take our box, just scale it up, press W, and go like this. Okay, go back to our, so you see our VRA physical cam. So what's happening is, when we render it, you're going to see that the light comes out of only one side of our light. It's illuminating this half of the scene, but not the other half of the scene. So to get around this, we can do double-sided. Now you can see immediately in the viewport we get feedback showing, hey, now it's illuminating both sides of the scene. So this is useful for interior architectural design if you want to make sure your scene is completely lit. If you want to do some, reflections on a ceiling or something, that's what you'd use it for. You still see we have the line of black right here to where our light doesn't reach, but it's actually coming from both sides. If we turned on indirect illumination, you'd see that it would bounce back and fill in those areas. Okay? Your next one is going to be invisible. So currently you see we can actually see the light. It's a big blocky white thing. And a lot of the times this is not what you're looking for. So when you do invisible and you render it out, you can see that the light no longer shows anything. Your light disappears, but you still get the actual illumination from the light without the harsh white part. Okay, we're going to actually uncheck that again. Now the next one here is ignore light normals. Now what this means is usually when you have an object in the scene, the light shines equally in all directions. But when you have this off, light shines more brightly based on the actual direction of the surface normal. So if you have a polygon that's turned upside down, I don't think we can do it with a plane here, but what we can do is convert this plane to an editable poly, select all the sides and just drag them up, okay, and click this and let's flip it. So now that poly's backwards. So now you see when we render it, we get this kind of black thing right here. And to illustrate that even more, let me increase the multiplier here a bit so you can see it. You see we kind of have our black normal. And when you ignore the light normals, I believe, okay, hold on here, let me think about this for a second. You hardly almost ever use this option. More light is emitted in the direction of the source surface normal. Okay, so it's actually from the light itself. So it means if your light, for example, this plane here only has one normal. It points, in this kind of direction to the left. If we were using a mesh source like a plane or something, light would only be pointing in the directions of the plane. So it would be less, it would kind of display less to the side. I'm not really sure how to explain this one. I've never actually seen it used nor used it myself, so it's kind of one of those dead things that nobody uses anymore. So we're just going to kind of carry on. If you want to do a little more research on that, you can go to the Chaos Group website and they have some explanations, but kind of unneeded. Now your next one is going to be no decay. So when you do this and you render it, you're going to see that the light is the same strength everywhere throughout the image. So generally, light decreases with an inverse squared, and it kind of shoots off in a curve. The farther away it gets, the more it decays. When you use this option, you're going to have the same light strength right at the source versus, 10 feet back from the source. This is good if you want to have a general lighting for your entire scene, like a dull, basic background light, and then you want to add something on top of that. So that's the decay option. So we're going to turn that back. And the next one here is Skylight Portal. Now what this does is when you turn it on, it doesn't use the color or multiplier parameters that we set up here. So you see how they're kind of grayed out and you can't click on them anymore. What it does use is environmental light. So let's click on this, you'll see we see nothing. But then, if say we add a V-ray sun in here, like so, let's not add the environment map and render. Oops, we need to actually make the sun come up a little bit. There we go. There we go. So now you see, well, go back to our camera. There we go. So now you see we have a little bit of light coming through. So what the Skylight Portal did is it allowed that sun to kind of shine through onto our scene. Now, admittedly, the sun is still kind of coming through. I'm trying to, you only use this in like a window of a scene when you want the window to show something. Let me see if I can mock up something real quick to where we can show that. Okay, so here's a box, and here's another box. W. We use compound objects, pro boolean, start picking. Pick that box. Now we have a hole in our box. Okay. Let's, oops, undo that. Take our plane here, or whatever it is we've got, and front viewport, just delete these extra things we added. Okay. Some of this actually you have to model a little scene to show what you're trying to achieve. Okay, there we go. Now what we're going to do is delete that box, take our light, push E and rotate it 90 degrees right here. Go into the front viewport here, press F3, W, and just kind of scale your light to where it's the same size as this opening. It has to be generally the same size, not exact. Although if you want, you can make it exact. Okay, there we go. And let's actually scale this down like that. Okay. So now we have our light right here. So now let's adjust where our camera is. Okay. Come over here. Change our target. Okay. And just drag it back. So let's first uncheck that and do another render. So this is what we have currently. We just have a light that's illuminating, pretty harshly, and then we have, the sun coming through. And let me adjust where that is too. Okay. And sunlight. Okay, now let's make this a simple Skylight Portal. And actually, to see this even more, let's make this kind of a, purple color. So we render it out, you see we got the purple light, right? Now what we can do is make this a simple Skylight Portal, or a Skylight Portal, and we render it out. Now you see we only get that sun coming through right there at the window, but yet we can still use the parameters and size of this light, so we don't get any interactions inside of here. Plus we can still use the viewport shadings and have individual subdivisions and shadows. This is a really powerful tool here. Now, when you use the simple option right here, what this is doing is it's telling this light that there's really nothing behind it. There's like pretty much an outdoors or anything like that. So what it does is it uses the environment color directly. So if we go to rendering, environment, and then we use a, what's it called here? I want a V-Ray sky. There we go. So when we have that checked, you're going to see that now we can see the outside there. So we're using the exact background on the outside. Now, generally you want to change the colors so you can see what's happening. But you can see how it's kind of bleeding in right here. We have this color. And that's something you wouldn't otherwise get. You see how it changes when you change it to simple. You get a bit more of the blue, and it becomes a bit sharper as it's using that solely, saying, hey, I don't care that there's nothing else out there. This is what I want to use. Okay? Let's see. Next option we have here is store with irradiance map. So this is only useful when you're using indirect illumination. So when you turn that on, you see we have an irradiance map right here. Now what you can do is set this option, store with irradiance map on, and it will calculate the light and it'll store them within that. So what it means is that when you initially render it, it'll go a bit slower. It'll have to do all its pre-passes like normal. Actually, you have to actually render on the real thing. It'll do its pre-passes like normal, and it'll render out your scene. What happens is it's storing this data that we have, and then when you re-render it, so say render it again, it'll take a little bit less time. So let's see how long this one takes. The last one took about 9 seconds, and generally you'd only use this for very complex scenes that you weren't actually changing anything. What it does is it just stores the light bounces within inside of that irradiance map. That way you can reuse the data that you already rendered out. Okay? So carrying on here, let's uncheck all this stuff and bring it back to a basic white light. And we'll kill that and delete this. We'll rotate this back to where we were. And we still got our plane. Okay, good. So now, we'll build a box there too. Box. Perfect. So, your next option here is Effect Diffuse. So say when you render it out normally, you get, actually cancel that, cancel, you want to turn off global illumination for this. There we go. So you render it normally, you see we pretty much get nothing. And why are we getting nothing? We did something terrible. I have no idea what we just did to kill it. No idea at all. Change this back to default. That's still a plane, that's good. Well, we did royally screw up something. Oh, it's the environment. Get rid of this V-ray sky. There we go. Now we're back to normal. We'll come back here, push R, Skylight back up, render, and increase the multiplier so we can see something, I hope. Figure out where we're actually rendering from. Try to figure out why we can't see anything. Let's see. Cast shadows is on. Well, we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. We'll make a new light. Sometimes lights go a little funny because you push a setting and you have no idea what you pushed, and then bad things happen. But not a problem, and we still have the same issue. Huh? How interesting. I doubt it's the multiplier. Nope. What did we do? Okay, well, we can... Man, what the hell just happened? It's not like we really changed much in our scene. Cast shadows, oh, store in a radiance map, maybe. Alright, there we go. Okay, we're good. Forgot to uncheck some of these options you never actually used, because if you're not using the radiance map, it'll try to use previous data. Okay? So carrying on, affect diffuse. Let's uncheck this and you'll see immediately what it does. It won't affect the diffuse colors anymore. So if you have something with a bit of reflection, it'll still reflect. So to illustrate that, let's go over here. View material. We'll apply that to the box. Okay? Give this some reflection and some reflection. There we go. And re-render. And you need to have indirect illumination on usually. See what it does. Okay, well, it's trying to reflect on a black background. But you can actually see it a little bit right here, really faint. It's reflecting on the black background. So it's really, really faint, but you can see the color right here. So what it does is it just completely negates any actual color. It does not affect the color at all. So now let's render this again. And let it do its thing. Okay, so here we go. We have our little box with a couple reflections and some refractions. Not very good, but hey, it does the job. And now if we uncheck this specular option, let's go back into our materials window here and give this a bit of glossiness. So you can come here and change the glossiness of both these so you get kind of a more round look. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to use a sphere for this example. There we go. Material, and just assign this material to the sphere. Actually, reflect will change that back to there. So now, come back to our light. Okay. So let's render this quick. And we can actually change these settings next time. So you see we have our light, which is reflecting the environment here. Now if we uncheck affect specular, it'll get rid of this white stuff that we have going on. So you see how it gets a lot duller. Now we're just simply reflecting the light back and not any of that specular reflection we would get otherwise. It kind of dulls down the image. And then if you have reflections in your image, it'll even stop those. So I don't think we're actually going to have any change here. Oh, we do. Okay, so yeah, so like I said before, that was actually the reflection of the light. So it stopped the reflection, which is coming back, and the refractions, which are going the other way. It's a kind of a two-way street, and this is going to stop them one at a time. Let's put both those back. Now the next thing here is sampling. This is going to be a little more difficult to illustrate, but we'll try our best. Let's go here and uncheck this. So when we render it, let's change this to 1 just so you can see what's happening. So we change this to 1. Look how grainy it gets. You see all this grain in here? This means you're only having, your light is pretty much bouncing, let's call it once. You change the subdivision, now you're bouncing the light twice. So you immediately see we get a little bit better. And so let's change this to 16. This is a huge difference here. So when you render it out, you're going to see all this, gritty stuff goes away. The light is getting a lot more smooth, and it's able to blend in better with the background. Okay. Next, we have what's called shadow bias. So what this does is it causes shadows to kind of move away. So let's change this to just 1 if it'll let us, and we'll render it. And we should be seeing some results. Well, it's straight up and down is the problem. Let me see how we can illustrate this. Let's delete our sphere, our box. Okay, and we'll just increase the box just a bit, because it kind of prevents shadows from leaking over. So there's that, and let's change it now back to 0. Alright, so it doesn't really work in this. This is only if you have, like, in some cases you'll have it where if you have like 2 planes intersecting, you'll get kind of like a shadow that leaks through, almost like a little black splotch, and that'll just try to eliminate it. The smaller the better. And the cutoff allows you to change what light intensity will be cut off at the end. If it's below a certain level, it won't even show it. And I can't really illustrate it here again. Let's try to make this like 1,000 and re-render. Maybe it will let us do it. So you see there's nothing here. What happens is our light is only at 77. So we move this back down to, say, 60. You'll see that now our light is actually, well, whatever it is, our cutoff is a little bit different here. There we go. So move back down to 1. You can see that now our light is cut off. So this is an easy way of allowing high intensity lights to be removed from your scene and low intensity lights to shine through. Okay, your next thing here is a use texture. So this pretty much is used when you have the dome, sphere, or your plane light selected. It allows your light to be kind of distributed in a pattern. So we're going to actually try to choose an image here. Let's try tiles. Okay. When we render, you're going to see now that we have actual tiles. It changes the way that we're rendering this. Maybe tiles was a bad example. We'll try smoke. Okay, well, you need to have actual white. Maybe noise will work. There you go. You can kind of see how it's a big blob. And if you go into our materials, you drag this noise over as an instance. Okay, let's open it, and let's make this fractal noise, and the size, let's lower the size here, and let's try re-rendering. Alright, so let's enable our global illumination again, see if we can get it to have the desired result. Alright, well what it's supposed to do is it allows you to combine direct and indirect sampling. So like if you have a surface here, it can kind of reduce noise right around the edges. I'm actually getting this from the Chaos Group website. Again, this is something I don't ever actually use in my light, so I'm not very clear as to why you'd want it. it pretty much says it's used to reduce noise, and it allows you to use a texture for the light surface, but I don't really think it makes a difference on whether or not you do. Maybe it's actual light itself. We'll go take a look here, because again, like I said, I never actually use this. So let's use the texture. Cancel this texture. We'll go back to noise. Okay, render. Well, you see the light gets a little darker, but that's about all that actually happens. And you can change the resolution of that if you want. It just does what texture you should sample your light at, and the adaptiveness is the amount of light that you're using. So if you use 0, you're not going to use any adaptation, and if you use 1, it's going to be the most adaptive of them all. But again, it's pretty much ignored. I've never actually seen that used in a real light before. And the last thing here is directional. And again, this is another one of those options that nobody ever actually uses. I'm not even going to begin to try to explain it because I have no idea what it does. You can see when you change it, we get this little doohickey that comes out of it. You can actually change. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. So I think that what it does is it actually regulates the light to certain areas. Oh, okay. Learn something new every day. So you see, we have this kind of like, it's kind of like putting a lampshade on your light to where it only shines in certain areas. You can change that, to make it perfectly 90 degrees, or it'll come straight down in a box, or you can bring it up to where you have it kind of in a flat plane, everything below where the light is, assuming you don't have two-sided enabled. Okay. And with that, let's see, go to mental ray indirect illumination. This just allows you to use mental ray instead of V-ray, and just lets you use the light parameters for that. This will just tell you how many photons you want to have for your caustics, your global illumination, and your energy. It's pretty much just like multipliers. It makes it brighter or darker. And manual settings, well, you can't really do it with the other thing enabled, so we're not even going to go over that. But that is a general overview of the V-Ray light. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. I'll see if I can answer them. Again, your main things here are just going to be a multiplier color, your height and your width, cast shadows, double-sided and visible, Skylight Portal for interior scenes. These three right here, depending on what you're going for, affect diffuse, affect specular, affect reflections. If you want a better render, increase the subdivisions, and your shadow bias, you can pretty much always leave it at default, whatever it is, 0.02 or something. Texture you're never going to use. Directional you can use if you want to have a specific direction that your light's pointed in. But I'd pretty much always suggest just using regular lights, because no real light would have just a single direction. You could always model that in afterward and have it actually reflect appropriately. So with that, I'll wrap up this tutorial, and I'll be back with the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe to my videos. I'm Eternal Blade, and I'll see you next time.